Hello, my beautiful Rich and Chill souls, and welcome back. I am so excited for today because Dr. Shawna Darou is in the house. Shawna, welcome. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. I love talking about, health and wellness and all of these things, so I can't wait to get started.
We will. And it's a pleasure to have you here. So our listeners already got your official introduction. But let's take a step further. So, if you can please introduce yourself in your own words and add why it is important to you, what you are doing, and why you chose this path.
Sure. So I'm a naturopathic doctor and functional medicine practitioner in Toronto, Canada. And my focus through my naturopathic career, which has been over 20 years now, has always been on women's health. And that has evolved over time. So currently, my main focus is perimenopause and menopause. I find that my practice ages and grows with me. And the part of it that I really hone in on is what we call metabolic health, which is your blood sugar regulation, your weight, your metabolism, because when the hormones start to shift, this really starts to shift. And it's an area that we can focus on that can make an immense difference at the symptoms of menopause, but also that transition into aging in general. So it's an area we have, where we can make a big impact on health now and in the future. So it's the area that I focus the most on in my one-on-one work, group programs, and things like that. In a lot of ways, it's very simple. It's all lifestyle. um, and what I always tell people is that menopause is like learning how to live in a different body, and the rules change, and we need to relearn what the rules are.
Wow, that,
Uh,
that's beautiful. That's beautiful. Let's pause on that for a little bit. You know, So, as you know, or our listeners know, we are talking most of the time about finances and investing here, and of
yeah.
course, the mindset and discipline around it. And Shona and I, we met in a mastermind, and it was so fascinating for me. It seems that our topics have nothing to do with each other, but as our mentor always says, how you do one thing is how you do everything. So I felt like it is really interesting how our topics blend in together. And as you said, you talk a lot about this turning overwhelm in perimenopause and midlife and all the changes that come in this season of life into action. So what do you think? What role do mindset and discipline or daily discipline play in creating that lasting change with health, especially in menopause or perimenopause?
So discipline is huge
Mm.
because we don't have as much, we can't get away with as much anymore. So, the consistency over
That's so
time,
true.
day after day, and the discipline of how we eat and how we sleep and
Mm.
how we manage our nervous systems and how we move our bodies becomes non-negotiable at this age.
Mm.
So it is something I coach a lot on is how do we create these habits over a lifetime now?
Mm.
And, one of the things that I talk a lot about is what I call flexible consistency so that
Oh, that's
you can
beautiful. I
create,
like that.
yeah. So we
Flexible
create
consistency.
momentum without, burning ourselves out and then stopping
Mm.
the
Mm.
start and stop because it's very difficult and it's also very hard on the body. So
Yeah.
flexible consistency for me is that, there's a daily routine of movement, but it can vary depending on how you slept or how busy your day
Mm.
is, but it's
Mm.
non-negotiable.
Oh, I like that. I like that really much because sometimes, when you see, and maybe that's more a masculine thing, you see some, oh, have to do it like this. At 5:30, you have to do this. And if you don't do it, the day is a mess. And so I really love that concept. So if you don't know already, Shauna is a real badass, by the way. She recently ran the Boston Marathon. I mean, I can't even think about behind, one round in a stadium like 400 meters or something. So that's just amazing. And congratulations on that.
Thank you.
And maybe you can share, what did that experience teach you about long-term commitment, showing up consistently, discipline again, of course, and like similar to investing, delayed gratification and trusting in the process. And how does that translate into the work with your clients?
Great question. So this was actually my second Boston Marathon, and I want to go back to the first
Oh
one
my
because,
gosh.
yeah, because the first one was life
I
transforming
can't.
for me.
Wow.
Um, so I've always been active and fit, but I was never a distance runner. During the
Mhm.
pandemic, I started running because there wasn't much else to do in 2020 and 21. And I got really into it again.
Could do
I,
something else, but you could also run
I,
a marathon, of
well,
course.
I lived in a very small condo with,
Mhm.
with two teenagers, and a partner and two dogs, and I really needed to get out. And running was something we were allowed to do. So I got out and
Okay,
did a lot of
that
running.
makes sense.
Anyways, the practice and the consistency of it really built. And about 8 months before my 50th birthday, I decided I wanted to run the Boston Marathon as a life transforming moment for me.
Wow.
And so I found a race to qualify. I trained. My first race was crash and burn, but I did qualify. And from
Wow.
there, what I learned from the process was that I needed a lot of support. I
Mhm.
hired a coach and a dietitian. I got a game plan. I found a training plan that worked for my age and ability, not for
Mhm.
somebody who was 25 years old.
Mhm.
And I committed to 8 months of training to do that race with
Wow.
again, with a lot of support. Like I learned that I couldn't do it on my own, that I needed somebody to walk me through the process of it, commit to
Wow.
something that big, and that was that big a stretch. Um, I love having a goal to train for. It gives purpose to
Mhm.
exercise for me. My brain works better that way. If I know I have a race, I know I have to run 3 times a week, I'll make it
Mhm.
happen. Um, if I don't have something to train for, excuses get in the way, the runs turn into other things. Again, it's not as
Mhm.
focused to me. And then the race itself is magical. Like, if you want to restore your faith in humanity again, go watch a marathon. Like
Wow.
the support, the people, the crowds, the
Yes.
cheering, the competitors themselves, like it's the
Mhm.
most positive, life affirming environment you've ever been in. Um, and Boston is one of the hardest courses in the world. It's a lot of uphill and downhill. So you
Oh
need all
my
of that
gosh.
support. So
It's
do I need to do it again? Probably no. I think twice is enough. But
okay.
I like these moments because for me, they precipitate change. It's like a
Mhm.
moment in time where I sort of gather some momentum and then prove to myself that I'm capable of something bigger, which allows me
Absolutely.
to take a leap.
Mm.
So that's how I've framed them. The first time after Boston, I made an enormous life upheaval, that took a lot of courage and energy to get to, and
Mm.
completing Boston gave me the courage to do that. And I did it again this year as another, proof to myself that I'm capable of big things and difficult things.
Wow, that's so amazing. I mean, I'm, bowing to you. But you said something so important, and I think that's really in many areas, we always think we have to DIY things, and no matter
Mhm.
if it comes to the topic you teach on or my coaching with finances and investing, it's always like, oh yeah, I already know this for 20 years, or you always have been a runner, but you have to have the support, as you said, with
Mhm.
trainers that are trained with your age and your day-to-day life or whatever.
Mhm.
And I think that's really underestimated.
It is. Yeah. I think we all need coaching and support. Even in the health world, I have my own naturopathic doctors. I don't pretend to
Absolutely,
know how
yes.
to do it all myself. And, distance running, I didn't know how to do that. I didn't know how to eat for distance running. I know a lot about nutrition, but this is different.
Yes, of course. And I always say, I'm a finance and investor coaching, and that's why I have a finance and investor coach. Of
Exactly.
course I do, because yes, and as you said, we always have to have this bigger perspective sometimes, and trainers that are really specific in this thing that you want to improve and that you are
Mhm.
not the absolute expert in, although you are an expert and an ND for yourself. But yes, I think that's really important. And especially for women, as I mean, I experienced that a lot. It's like, oh no, I first try it on my own, and maybe later or never I get a coach. And so it's so beautiful that you also set this as an example. And when I start working with my clients, the first thing I always get is an overview of the numbers and
Mhm.
what is exactly coming in, going out, where does the money go. So in your work, when you start with someone or in a group, are there certain numbers you like metabolic data or habits that you recommend to track first, when someone has no idea where to start?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why in my work we have like long intake forms before I start working with
Mm,
somebody is to gather information. And I'm very much a testing type of naturopath, so I do a lot of lab testing and blood work. So if we take
mm,
like metabolic health first, because that's a good portion of what I do,
mm,
there is an initial assessment. We look at basic blood work, so things like your cholesterol panel, your
mm,
fasting blood sugar, your hemoglobin A1C, which is like a average of your glucose over the past 3 months. And we look at your blood pressure and your waist circumference. So
wow.
those are, 5 markers that we can gather a really good snapshot of your metabolic
Mm,
health. And when I work with somebody in terms of like building the building blocks of nutrition and daily movement and stress reduction and getting enough sleep, we
mm,
can see a shift in those numbers in as little as 12 weeks, right? Without
wow.
a radical diet, with just lifestyle changes, like one little building block at a time. Now, it may not be perfect in 12 weeks, it depends where you start, but you will see a change. So,
Wow,
yes,
that's
I like to
amazing. I
assess
mean,
things.
12 weeks, that's nothing.
Yes. Yeah. Which is why I love group programs, is because
Mm,
you have the momentum and the support to make change in a short amount of time. Whereas, sometimes when I work with people one-on-one, it takes them time to implement them, or I give too
mm.
many steps at one time and they actually needed more support than they thought they did to implement change.
Yeah, sure.
So, yeah, but yeah, it's interesting because the small changes make a big impact when they're done consistently over time.
Absolutely. Oh my gosh, this is another gold nugget and so beautiful. So, another thing, or you mentioned it here also, I heard you talk about recently a lot on social media was this glucose monitoring. So, is
Hmm.
this also a good place to start? Can you share more about that, please?
Sure. I use a continuous glucose monitor as a tool in my work because it's a great way of gathering data. So we get to see in real time, how is the food we're eating affecting our blood sugar? So
Mm,
I teach a mini course on how to use that. And it's also part of my like metabolic mastery group coaching program as well, because again, it gives it gives life to the recommendations and the tools. So for
mm,
example, if I'm telling people that you need to eat more protein, you have to walk more steps every day, we work on your fiber, you need to get at least 7 hours of sleep. When they do those things, they see that their glucose pattern is much more level compared to when they don't. They see big spikes and dips when they're not doing it.
ah,
So
that's
it
cool.
sort of brings it home.
Hmm.
So again, it's a great way of gathering data. They can be used inappropriately, though. You can get afraid to eat if you use one without guidance because you see
Hmm.
all these spikes happening and
Yes,
you
of
might just
course.
like remove
I
a
eat
bunch of
something.
foods
Oh
from
my
your
gosh,
diet.
what's happening?
Yeah. Exactly. So with coaching and guidance, they're a great tool on their own, maybe a little bit overwhelming.
Mm,
But again, it's like one of the few tools that we have easy access to that
mm,
we get, moment by moment data of like how what we eat, which is essential, is
of
impacting our
course.
body. And, for example, myself, if I um, some things I've implemented since using a glucose monitor is that after lunch, I stand at my desk for an hour and a half because when I sit
Mm.
down, my glucose goes much higher compared to when I stand up after lunch. And that
Wow. Oh, that's so
yeah,
cool.
small change, right? So
Wow.
it changes my afternoon energy. If I don't have a glucose rise and a dip, my
Hmm.
energy's
Hmm.
steady. So it's not a big deal to stand up for an hour, hour and a half. Standing all day, your back hurts, but it's
Yeah.
something that I've just made a habit. Like right now, I'm standing up. I have a platform on my desk
Hmm.
that goes up and down. So it's easy for me to, from one patient appointment to the next, stand
Mm.
up and then sit.
Yeah.
And again, small change that made a big impact on afternoon energy.
Wow. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
This is so fascinating. I feel we could go on for hours on that. But I think our listeners got a pretty good idea where to start. And of course, we will link all your social media and places to reach out to you in the show notes below. And as always, our guests have the final word. So, is there anything you would like to share that's important to you? Or maybe, as you mentioned, you have a group program or this program about glucose and whatever you like.
Thank you. I I think what I said before about small changes make a big impact on your health
Mm,
is where I'd like to end things because people often overcomplicate health.
yes.
And in my opinion, the small changes like, eating your protein, walking through the day,
Mm,
prioritizing rest and downtime, getting enough sleep, eating more vegetables go a long, 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 long way towards optimal health in the future. So it
mm,
doesn't need to be as complicated. If you want to learn more from me, the best place to get an idea of what I offer and what I do is to just follow me on Instagram.
yes.
So Dr. Shawna Darou
Mm,
um, is my Instagram handle, and that's where you'll learn the most. And there's always
yeah.
links in terms of other things that I
Mm,
offer, but that's the simplest place to find me.
perfect. Shauna, thank you so much for your time. It was such a pleasure to have you here. Thank you for listening, and until next time, here at the Rich and Chill podcast.